Today's the 22nd of March 2016. This is my vehicle and I am in the municipal car park at a village called Fieso d'Artico, which is about 1/4 of the way between Padua and Venice. It's a wonderfully warm day, and sitting in the vehicle it was pretty hot. Now this village has a population of something like 7,000 to 8,000 people, and it's particularly noted for the shoe industry. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a walk along the canal, or I should say the river, because it's particularly noted for the outstanding palaces which were built by wealthy people from Venice in the medieval period, and some wonderful palaces I passed on the way here in the car. And the car park is, I came here last night. I parked next to the town hall, but I thought it might be a bit noisy. And then went out for a walk, found this place. Now that's a much better place to stay, and it's very, very quiet. Villa Pisani, one of several. I translate this into English as the Pisani Palace, but you can also say Villa Pisani as well. Now here, in June 1934, Hitler and Mussolini met. Hitler landed at Venice, then they came here for a chat. So there we have some information. At the beginning of the 18th century, the architects Preti, Frigimelica, and there we have the date that Napoleon bought it in 1807, and the people who lived here, including Vittorio Emanuele, who was here in 1866, and it became a national monument in 1882. Now the Pisanis, some of the other Villa Pisanis were built for a cardinal, but this Pisani, he was the Doge. That was the ruler of Venice. Someone buys tickets there. I'm not quite in the mood to go in at the moment, so I'll just take a photograph from him. On the day of the meeting of the two great dictators, Hitler turned up, as he was later described, looking a bit like a house painter, with his scruffy Mac and his silly fedora. Mussolini rather resplendent in uniform, as were the guards and all the rest. So despite the fact that Hitler actually asked for an informal meeting, Hitler was clearly not at ease, because Mussolini spoke very good German. He lived in Switzerland. And anyway, Hitler's nervousness apparently had a bit of a tick about him at the time. The thing is, he hadn't learned the ropes yet about being a great dictator. So next time they met, he turned up in full uniform. And anyway, as soon as they turned up here, Hitler changed, and what people later said was that they could hear him shouting and banging of fists and this type of thing. Hitler said it was the will of the German people and his that Austria should be united with Germany. Mussolini refused. Mussolini was protecting Austria, even sent later Italian troops to the border to make sure that there'd be no German interference in Austria. Anyway, so the meeting didn't go down too well. They still had a few other things to do though. They had to, so they cleared off separate cars back to Venice. Then they had a Wagner conference. They had a military parade. So Hitler did inspection, what have you, and this type of thing. And then Hitler went back to Germany by plane. Mussolini referred to Hitler as a madman, or words to that effect. And the strange thing is about Hitler, he's a person who bore grudges, but though despite all this, he doesn't seem to have borne Mussolini any malice afterwards. As far as Hitler was concerned, Mussolini was his great friend. And when they cemented the Rome-Berlin axis in 1938, it was as though this meeting here at the Villa Pisani in June 1934 had never happened. Now, Mussolini never liked Hitler, and he said this. Whereas Hitler really felt the opposite. Not only that, Hitler had already been snubbed by Mussolini. In 1927, Mussolini had refused to give Hitler a signed photograph. A request had gone through. Of course, in 1927, Hitler wasn't known, and Mussolini was, by then, the great dictator. Okay, Hitler wasn't known really in Italy, he certainly was known pretty well in Germany. In I think this is 1924, 25, I can't quite recall. It might even be 1922. Hermann Goering was in Venice and tried to get the support from the Italian fascists. I suspect actually it was 1924 or 25, after the seizure of power by Mussolini. There's a bit of a view around this magnificent palace, and it's not just this one, there's others as well. There we have the Palazzo Capello, which apparently wasn't named after an Italian footballer who later managed England. And some more views of the Brenta. Which seems to be flowing upstream rather than down. Maybe it's an optical illusion. So there we have the Rosinda Shoe Museum. There's a Stra War Memorial from Stra. And there's something I see for the first time. Somebody who was killed in Spain, captain as well. Anthony Massaro. I assume that's Massaro. There's a letter missing. First time I've seen that. '15, 1918. The other one, though, 1940, 1945. But they did put the name of the person who was killed fighting for the fascist rebels in Spain against the legal Republican government. Deaths from the First World War. But we can also see another thing, which I see for the first time. I'm not suggesting it's rare, I've seen it for the first time. Deaths in Libya. Now, it doesn't say when these deaths occurred. Did they happen during the Turkish War of 1912, or did they happen during the subjugation of the resistance to Italian rule by the native population, which happened in the 1920s. That is not mentioned. Now, on the left-hand side, we've got the names of people who were killed on the battlefield. Then we've got 3 people died when they were POWs. Then we've got 4 people who were lost, and the 2 in Libya. And on the other side, all of them, they're people who died of illness. So we've got more people dying of illness in the First World War. By the time of the First World War, the numbers of deaths through illness had actually decreased in comparison to those who were killed on the battlefield. This was largely due to lessons learned during the Crimean War, and in Crimea there were Italians, although they were then called Sardinians because Italy wasn't yet unified as such. But the lessons from the United Kingdom, from France and from Russia were the first primitive healthcare facilities were actually put up to try and look after the injured and to avoid the spread of diseases. We've got a clock tower here in Stra, which is very similar to the one in Festio, and indeed somewhat similar to what we see in Venice. And there's a new church, but I'm not too impressed by the town here. It's a bit run down to say the least. That town hall looks like something from Romania in the 1980s. So this piazza's behind the other one. Doesn't look very impressive either. And this place doesn't look very open. Although there's a doorbell, maybe somebody comes here from time to time. I wouldn't say it looked abandoned, because clearly the grass has been tended to. Maybe not in the past month or so, but I wouldn't say it's a pity necessarily, because I'm sure there are owners, and maybe the owners just can't afford the upkeep. I know many of the palaces have been taken by the local authority, or in the case of the Villa Pisani, it's the national government. But the thing is, there's only a limit to how many museums you can have. Via Venezia. I'm not at all impressed by Stra. So Villa Zanetti from the 17th century, and I presume that means the architect was Mr. or Miss